Hey guys, it's Jennie Wolek with the Wolek Group in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Keller Williams Realty Advantage. Thanks so much for joining us. I am super excited to share your journey with Jennie and agent success secrets with the amazing Haro Setian. How to do?
Haro. You thought you had the first name and you went to the last name. It's all good. Haro.
I said Haro.
You did say Haro.
Dang, did I mess it up? Anyway, you know what? This is just your life.
This is my life.
And I think that I heard you, I was listening to some of your other podcasts you've done. You're like, everybody just says my first name. So I've decided you are just a first name guy, just kind of like Madonna, Cher, Beyonce. They're all divas.
I was with you until you hit Beyonce.
All right.
I think Madonna's kind of cool. Cher is Armenian, so she gets, a certain level of respect. Beyonce is beyond me.
Badonkadonk.
Wow.
All right, so let's get to it. Let's just share with everyone where you're from, where you've been, where you're going, some of the production that you've had recently, and then what your big goals are for this year. We're going to dive into the meat of super duper success with lots of failure sprinkled in along the way.
Okay. So grew up in Boston, Patriots fan, and moved to South Carolina in 1995 to go to college. Finished at Clemson in 2000 with an economics degree. Went to work in Chicago, and then moved back to the South about a year and a half later, and went to work for a sales internship that I'd done in college, and I was a recruiter and a sales manager, and also did my own production. And then in 2008, I left that and started the search for the next career. And in 2009, I landed in Keller Williams on a team as a buyer's agent in the best market of all time, 2009. And the buyer's agent for 14 months. Then I was on my own. And 2012, I sold 36 homes in 2011. 2012, I made my first full-time hire. Late 2011 is when I went to my first national Keller Williams event, and my vision and my ability to see what was possible blew up. I had read MREA, Millionaire Real Estate Agent, several years previous, actually previous to being in real estate. And I said, man, that's really cool. If someone did that, that'd be really good. So 2012, early 2012, I hired my first full-time assistant, administrative person. By the end of that year, we were 4, and we closed 50 transactions, and then 124, 185, 258, 412, 478 last year. Just under $3 million in GCI, $96 million in volume, and we're on track for about the same, maybe even a little bit less this year. We've restructured a lot. We've gotten out of business with people that we realized – well, for whatever reason, there's a million reasons that happened. And this year's it's kind of a restructuring year, rebuilding year. We redid our core values, our mission statement, and the goal was to lay a foundation. We have a very good leadership team, a solid core. There's 5 of us. There's 22 people on the team total. Me and 4 others as the key leaders. And then our target, 10-year target, is $100 million in GCI in 10 years. So to get to $100 million. So in 2028, we want to be an organization that does $100 million in revenue. So that's the vision. The short term is that in 3 years, we'll be at $6.5 million, which we did, like I said, we'll be just under $3 million this year. We had $6.5 million, 1,000 units in our local market, and then whatever it takes from there to $100 million.
You're pretty clear on this vision.
Yes.
Where does that come from? Where does that perseverance and grit come from?
It's a good question. There's so many pieces to that. So, if you'd asked me that 5 or 6 years ago, I just kind of expected that if other people could do it, I could do it too.
Yeah.
So that was my expectation. And that, there are still people that are growing at a faster pace or have bigger businesses, clearly. And I think, that expectation has helped fuel where we are. The other thing is I really enjoy working with great people. And when you have great people, great things happen. And we've been lucky that that's been the case. Like we've gotten in business with several really great people, some that are still with us and some that have moved on to other opportunities. And it's really driven our growth. And then the clarity on the vision and our values was actually part of an exercise. I mean, my vision was kind of big anyway, but it was part of an exercise that we did as a leadership team together. It was really articulate, where do we collectively want to be 10 years from now? That's big, hairy, audacious, kind of makes you wet your pants a little bit to think about how to get there. And that's what kind of set that in motion. And then, I have an underlying philosophy about business that's also really important to me. I think business is actually equipped to answer some of the toughest questions that our world faces, in that churches and governments can't handle and may not even have the human capital necessary to handle the world's biggest problems. Yet business is better at cash. It's better at aligning people. I mean, we know governments and churches generally don't do a great job at aligning people towards solving things. Like, generally speaking, they have other spheres that they are important for. Like, without the rule of law, there's no way our businesses exist in this country or any other country. So we need government. We need those structures. So it's important. I'm not downplaying it. Church obviously has its place. But these are, kind of three of the biggest, or nonprofits, if you will, even as part of that church side. These are some of the biggest institutions that exist in society. And generally speaking, they work separately from each other and apart from each other to solve the problems of the world. And I think business can do a better job of coming in line with those to solve the biggest issues. I also think, I always joke when I teach, is that I know three things about God. One, there is one. Two, you're not him, and neither am I, is number three. And so, if there's a God and he's created us in his image and we are productive human beings, then that means he's a producer too. And I think we see that in, frankly, all versions of the scriptures, whether you're Christian or the God of the universe is a creator. And if we're made in that image, then we're also creators, and work is a good thing, not a curse. And I think most people live in work as a curse and not a good thing to be embraced. And even the mindset of, I work so I can fund my perfect life, somehow makes work a lesser thing. Like, I'm working because that's mercenary for this other end over here, that's actually the good thing. And this is just something I have to endure until I can get to that. And I just think that's a misaligned way of thinking. And I don't frankly buy that philosophy. I believe I'm living my perfect life and being a productive, valuable member of society that delivers great products and services, that employs people. And I mean, literally people's lives change when they come to work for you. And frankly, that happens regardless of your intentionality around it. And when done with intentionality, it can be so much better.
Well, let's just go there. You started down the path of building a great team. I mean, in order for others to allow you to have this big business, this big vision, you've got to find people that also think that way. They're already accountable people. They're already big thinkers. So how do you find them?
So I think the conversation, so there's a class that obviously you're familiar with called career visioning, which I love and I'm a student of and actually teach. And I love that. And there's a class before the class. And I don't know what the name of the class before the class is, but it's something about mission, vision, values. And I don't know that you find great people unless you articulate what you are and are really clear about what that is. And because you could have a great person, but if they're not aligned with the vision of the organization or you as an individual, then it's not going to be a great relationship. So I think that's first step, is to get really clear on mission, vision, values.
So we need to create a class, because you're absolutely right. I just took career visioning with Seth Campbell. And when asked in the very beginning who has a mission statement, 2, maybe 3 out of the room. So this needs to be something that we all dig deep on, whether it's our personal mission statements and then sharing it with our team and having buy-in. And right.
Yeah, I mean, critical. Because that's what drives us. And at the end of the day, I actually learned this from Seth, it was either Seth or John Davis that I first heard this, but I don't want people that are loyal to me. I want people that are loyal to the mission of the organization. And that's way better because I'm going to let them down. If you're loyal to me, like, you're going to get pissed off. Because I'm going to let you down. I'm going to make you angry. I'm literally going to do something. I'm going to wrong you at some point. Like, it's just going to happen because I'm a human and you're a human.
And I'm a mess.
Just how it works. So I don't need your loyalty. I need to be loyal to the mission of the organization, and the organization needs you to be loyal to the mission of the organization.
Love that.
So I think that's important. What was I answering?
About finding great people.
Yeah. So once you've identified mission and then values, then I think it's a matter of finding the people who are in line with those values. And what you see is, as you get to know them, you'll see those values. They either show up in their world in the past and in who they are in the past, or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, don't try to like be their nurse or their counselor or their savior. You know, they're just not good for the organization. I was just reading. I never actually read this book, Good to Great. And I'm shocked that I never read it, but maybe that was a divine thing because it was so apropos, some of the stuff I read yesterday on the plane about getting in business with the right people. And if you find yourself having to manage someone, likely you've made the wrong hire. And I was like, wow, I don't know that I've ever seen it that clear in writing like that, that great people don't make you feel like a lousy manager. The moment you start feeling like a lousy manager, you have a hiring issue.
That's a good one.
I was like, that's such freedom.
Great people don't make you feel like a lousy manager.
Yeah, and I'm not saying like someone is even saying like you're a lousy manager, but you just in your head, you're like, okay, how can I help this person? What systems do I have to devise to help this person? Like, that's not, you got a hiring problem.
Yeah, right. Well, you have a class that you teach. You've been teaching it. So Are you traveling? What's the plan with this great class?
I usually do it once a month.
Yeah.
I would love to tweak and tune it even more because I've learned so much along the way. And, my goal is to make it really interactive and for the people to walk away from it feeling like they got value. And I pretty much feel like I've nailed that every time. And it's just, and that's not it sounds almost a little self-aggrandizing, whatever. But I really like being transparent about the pains that we've had. The class is 7 million to 96 million in 6 years, all the failures, and just being transparent about the things we've screwed up. And it's like I wrote the PowerPoint for that class, and then from the point that PowerPoint ended, like the period in time I wrote it through, like since then I haven't updated it, and I've had like I could write in a whole new class since that time of stuff we screwed up, which I still incorporate in, but I have like this timeline of events, of disasters.
Well, let's just entertain everyone and talk about the amazing fail forwards that you've had, so we all get to learn from them. So why don't you give us some highlights?
I'd say that there's 3 biggest ones that if I had to go back and recreate my world, there's 3 things that I would do completely differently. First of all, you heard what I said. I started as a buyer's agent on a team. So when I was a solo agent, and by the way, this was in a market where having a listing was not a good thing because it's sad. When I started my business on my own, my first year, the year I sold 36, 13 of them were listings, 23 were buyers. And then the following year, that same trend continued. It was like, I think we sold 50 houses and it was like 14 listings, 36 buyers.
Right.
And that buyer heaviness has continued to this day. And I didn't build as strong a listing muscle back then. And we got really comfortable hiring buyer's agents. And we saw that we had some proclivity in that. And I actually had a really good leader there. And so we just kept doing that and neglected to build the listing side out. So if I had to start all over again, I probably wouldn't work with a buyer at all. Maybe under the circumstances, like if they were my listing, if the same client. So that'd probably be the only buyers I would work with if I did this over again, especially in the beginning. Because I don't know who they are, but they say that it takes 16 hours to close a buyer and 6 hours to close a seller. And the specific numbers aren't even really that important. It's the ratio. You can almost think about it as and I say this in every one of my classes, like, is it okay if we have a business owner conversation rather than an agent conversation. As a business owner, I've really got to think about how I allocate time for the sake of the business. And anybody can think that way. I mean, if you have a family, you should think that way, because certain tasks pay better than other tasks. And you should be doing more of those and less of the lower paying ones. Just from if you're going to spend time away from your family, you better make it the best possible time.
Great.
So if it takes 16 hours to close a buyer and 6 hours to close a seller, we could say that every time you work with a buyer, you've said no to 2 to 3 sellers.
Ouch.
Yeah. So what would that 16 hours of, if you had just used that for lead gen, could you have generated 3 additional buyers or sellers with that time? So that's like the thought in my head. And if you actually want to like supercharge that thought, then it's, what if you spent the 6 hours on a listing on finding talent, and you probably need about 5 to 10 listings worth of time to find the person that could sell 100 listings for you.
Do you ever sleep? Does your mind just always turn?
I do sleep. Sleep is what helps the mind turn.
There you go.
So that would be number one. A listing focus would be number one. Number two, Gary says it. There's a list somewhere you can find it on KW Connect of 10 things that stop people from being a millionaire real estate agent. And one of them is not taking a stand on the first hire. Well, we did not take a stand on the first hire. We hired, you really want an empire builder, empire protector type of person in that first hire, and you don't want to move on from that first administrative hire until you have someone that has the capacity to build out the rest of the operations team for your business. And some people are like, well, Haro, I don't want a business as big as yours. I understand. If you're going to spend the time hiring, why not hire the best possible person?
True. And as you've traveled around and talked with other agents, do they say that that's hard to do?
I don't know. I haven't thought about that. I mean, at the end of the day, the hiring thing is also a skill. And so it's going to take many repetitions to get it right. So you may have to hire this role 3, 4, 5 times before you get it right. But you should not move on from this one until you master it. And then the next hire, and this is mistake number 3, if you will. So first one was not listing focus. Second, not taking a stand. Next one would be, had an admin person in place. The following hire should always be another administrative person hired by the first administrative person. But I didn't do that. I hired, but not 1 buyer's agent, 2 buyer's agents right out the gate. And I had, my previous career, I was fair amount of knowledge about hiring salespeople and training them. So like our sales started to rise and we got in business with some good people. So like training, good person, sales explode, and operations has always lagged behind for us. And I think we're finally righting that ship because we just fundamentally decided to slow the heck down this year and spend some time working on that and really finding the right kind of people to build out that platform. So that would be the second one is, you know, I will ask every class I teach it. I'm like, what's the second hire after you make your administrative hire? And half the room's like buyer's agent, half the room's like administrative. And I'm like, administrative. And it's not your job, it's their job. They shouldn't answer you. They should answer to the first one. So that's number 3. And the last one is a P&L conversation. I think most agents they don't have an entity. If they do, the money that goes into the entity called your GCI or your commission check is then, like, if it's like, okay, my goal is to make $100,000 in my real estate business this year, and I'm going to spend $100,000. And that's not how it works. If you need $100,000 to spend, your goal for your business should be that it generates $200,000.
Yeah.
So that you have some money to reinvest in the business. Otherwise, you're going to be on the same hamster wheel the rest of your life.
Have you ever been wooed by shiny objects?
Who, me?
Mm-hmm. Squirrel.
Of course.
So let's talk about some of the mistakes you've made in hiring or using tools or technologies that has eaten some of your budget.
So we didn't go as deep on the P&L mistake. Mm-hmm. And because of our average price point, I haven't had the money luxury to fool around with money as much, which is Kind of good. It's been decent discipline. I still like nice things and I like spending money. I think it's just, you feel like you killed something and brought it home. It's just something about like this primordial, I spent money and I got this. And that's not the best for business. Shiny objects, I think I have had several hires I've made where the individual has been, notice I said several, like call me a fool because that's okay. Because I several times hired the best candidate of one for a role. And that's been, you too, huh? Great. All right, I'm in good company. Yeah. So I think that's been my biggest challenge. I haven't, the expansion thing has been a shiny object for many people. It really doesn't hold that much appeal for me, not in our current state. So, when it's right, and we'll do it. And I don't think we've tapped out what we can do here.
Sure.
Just short of 500 transactions in a market that did 13,000 last year. We got plenty of room to go. So I don't really have any. And my the kids are getting older, and like you can tell, like the conversations are getting richer, and there's more impact. Where the way I thought about it is when they were small was the time to build and work really hard, and I'm scaling back now because I enjoyed being with them when they were small, and I knew if I had to allocate lots of hours at any point in their childhood, younger would be better than older. So I chose younger. So now I'm just not interested in adding more work to my plate.
All right, let me ask you this. What do you see as agents as you're teaching this class and you talk with all of us and we've watched your growth and success? What is their biggest hang up or fear that holds them back from achieving what you have? We all have the ability.
I have to most every time, like there's a pride in this, I have to do it. And I think there's a healthy aspect to that of like responsibility and I got to do it. And I think the higher level of thinking is there's only so many things that I could possibly be good at, that it's silly for me to think that I have to do it all. We all understand the concept of leverage, yet somehow we don't, like there's a bridge out between this point and this point, and we don't cover the gap. And when I explain it, I do the math in class on a flip chart on how by spending $60,000 on a great administrative leader will actually raise your hourly wage in the business of real estate by 50%. Wow. And I just worked the math out. And when I worked the math out, people were like, oh my gosh. And they're like, we don't want to spend 60,000. I'm like, yeah, you spent 60,000, but you made another 100. Or 200. Yesterday it went from, because I said, hey, what's the average commission in your area? All right, great. What's average agent in this market that's full-time in real estate? How many transactions could they do per year? And the class told me 20. I kind of threw up a little in my mouth when they said 20. And they gave me their reasons, and I didn't hear them very well, and we still settled on 20. But it was 20 times 12,000 average GCI, so it's 240,000. I said, how many hours a week does this person work? They said 60. I said, they work 60 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, and they only sell 20 houses. Like, someone needs to get their head checked. And whatever, 240,000, that's 3,000 hours, 60 hours a week, 50 weeks, 240 divided by 6,000, excuse me. Did I get that right? 50, 60, 3,000. 240 divided by 3,000 is $80 an hour. So then we said, okay, how many of those hours were admin hours that you spent of the 60? And everyone agreed, 50% of the time is administrative work that someone else could do. I said, great, so you just bought back 30 hours. And what you're telling me is that in 30 hours of sales work a week, you sold 20 units. So is it fair to say that if you had 60 hours and you held time constant, that 60 hours would generate 40 sales? Yes. I was like, go ahead and poke holes in it. All your C's in the room, poke holes in that. And they tried. And I said, okay, let me ask you another question. The more you do something, what happens to your skills at it? They get better. Okay, so can we just agree 40? All right, 40. 40 times 12,000, 480. Minus 60 on the assistant, 420. 420 divided by the same 3,000 hours is $140 an hour. So we went from $80 an hour, spent 60 grand to $140 an hour. Sounds like a great freaking deal to me. And I think that helps people like, oh my gosh. Like,
Wow.
And I said, that's every role on the team will do that to your hourly return. Every role on the team can do that. Now, is this a get-rich-quick scheme? No. It might take you 2 or 3 hires to get the person. That's the person that takes you from doing 240 to 480. And 70 or 50%, whatever the number was, percentage increase in your average wage, that's kind of worth pursuing that, figuring out that skill to get that return. Kind of worth it. So they all agreed, and they went and hired assistants today.
Yeah, they did. Just they held firm on it, though. They took them all the way through the process.
Right.
Right?
Today.
Today. Wow, that was a mind-blowing conversation of just how simple it really is when you just look at the numbers, understand, treat your real estate business like a business.
Yep.
So now for our closing.
All right.
I want to hear some dirt, some scoop. We want to know, out of all the stories that you share in all of your failures, what's one that we really can feel the pain of that you have lived?
I mean, I can still tell you that today, like, if you said, Haro, do you have anybody on a 33 touch? I would look at you and I'd say, no, not really. We're working on it. And we did 500 units last year, just under. Whoa. Oh, here's another good one. I didn't have any written agent agreements for years. That gets messy.
So let's talk about how that got messy.
You know, it actually didn't get that bad because we focused on hiring great people.
Okay.
And it almost, I could see where it would go off the rails if we were in business with people that were less than full of integrity. And by God's grace, like, that didn't happen. And I'm like, holy cow, like, this could get really ugly.
Yeah.
And really painful, and like lots of drama, lots of pain. So I am thankful that it didn't get uglier. And I mean, we just literally last month finished up a version of agreements that's like, actually, I feel good about, because previously it was just kind of, we're just blowing and going, man. Like, bring people on and just roll. And I'm kind of the mindset of like, I'm a little bit of abundance on when people leave. And you also have to protect the business for the sake of the people in the business, present and future. So both things also have to be held together. Yeah, so I felt like that was pretty sloppy. The other thing is, if you don't run the MREA numbers for your business with your assumptions in it, you really get sideways. Mm-hmm. Average commission in MREA is $7,500 a deal. Well, I was running $5,000 a deal a few years ago. So $2,500 over 250 units. That's a lot of money. That's not in the bottom line. And so you're like, why am I not getting a 40% margin like the book says? It's a friggin' lie. Well, there's assumptions in there. You can't turn your brain off.
Even though we would like to some days.
Yes, please.
All right. So thank you so much for sharing all of this. Hey, how can someone...
What's your biggest aha?
I think that great people don't make you feel like a lousy manager.
Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it?
I think a lot of us struggle with why aren't they getting it? Why am I spending so much effort and time on them?
I just need to be a better leader. My leadership's growing.
I need to grow my lid.
Whatever, and really what it is you suck at hiring.
Yeah, so start over.
And what that's really about is doing it enough and failing enough till you get really good to understand what talent really does look like. And then when talent does show up here in the world, you're like, oh, I like how this feels.
Yeah, and when it shows up, or probably like you, I attracted enough great, talented, accountable people over the years that I've gotten lucky.
Yeah.
Right. I think a lot of us probably do that. We get really lucky and we're like, oh man, I nailed this.
Yep.
So that's not a good way to go. How can everyone send you a referral when they need one for you?
I mean, there's one Haro, so it's not hard. Haro, Greenville, South Carolina. The crazy thing is, since our business has grown as much as it has, there's actually no other realtors left here, and they've all left town. So we're the only ones. So just send us all your business.
Well, that's a really easy way to do that. And you're not the other one. You're the Greenville, South Carolina. I hear
Greenville, South Carolina. There's actually Greenvilles in like 40 states.
Yeah,
so Greenville, South Carolina.
Yeah. Well, you're awesome. I look forward to seeing you real soon at Mega Camp. Thank you for spending your time.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, you were great. If you guys need anything from me, my number is 918-706-9845. Have a good one. Bye. See ya.
Bye.